Let's get some prize picks in today, guys. Last night's picks went 1 and 5. I opted for two positive EV plays last night, and then I went with two stacks. Kyrie Irving was one of those positive EV plays who did cash under 7.5 assists, and Curry was the other one who ended up not playing. Then I went for Mahomes and Kelsey on the unders. They both cashed on the overs. Of course, when you're pairing these players together, you want them to both hit in the same direction. I just got the direction wrong. Same with Trae Young and Murray here. They got absolutely blown out by the Wizards of all teams. Only got 99 points. So, of course, if the Hawks are not playing well, both Murray and Trae Young are more likely to go under. But the whole game script of this game was supposed to go completely different. They were actually -7 favorites, but just got absolutely destroyed. So, of course, they're both going to go under together. You could see how you flip all these props. So, take less on the Hawks players. Both of these would be green. And then same thing for Mahomes and Kelsey. Both of these would be green, right? So, when I'm creating these slips, I'm essentially going for either all greens or all reds, because instead of guessing 6 individual players, I'm technically just guessing 3 individual stacks. I'm guessing that Casey's going to do bad or just not get a lot of passing yards because maybe they're up or something like that. And then I'm guessing that the Hawks are going to be doing very well, maybe scoring a lot of points, and both these guys cash together. Now, Kyrie and Curry have nothing to do with that. It's just 2 independent picks. But you can see how when I'm creating slips like that, and it does go well, it goes a little something like this. So if you watch Tuesday's video, I actually gave out this exact slip with the Karl Anthony Towns taco, and then a triple stack on Kelsey, Mahomes, and Rice. So you can see how Mahomes got all those passing yards, and Kelsey and Rice still cashed these lines. And these are bumped heavily downwards when the weather was officially announced. So that's essentially how it works. I'm going for full slips rather than thinking of each individual player prop in a slip. So I'm going to get onto the board for today and go over some NBA and some NFL. I have a stack in the NFL, and then the rest are just going to be kind of positive expected value plays in the NBA. The first pick in the NBA is going to be Terry Rozier on the under 23.5 points. If you guys did not know, LaMelo Ball is back tonight. He will likely play limited minutes, but he is here. You can see his props are up, set at 23.5. We're not going to be looking at him for tonight, but we're going to be looking at Rozier instead. And generally, I just like this pick because of the juice on the under 23.5 points. Juice to about -119 or 54.34% likeness to hit. You could check a look on props.cash. Some books have him at 22.5. Well, one here, FanDuel has him at 22.5. We're getting a full point on that. And then every other book has juice towards the under, except BetMGM. They seem a bit confused. If you guys are on BetMGM, I would really take this under at -105. That's a great price for this line. So at the under 23.5, he has only gone over 40% of the time. If you even bump that down to 22.5, for example, 48% of the time still. So the unders are looking good at 23.5 and 22.5. I mean, I wouldn't play it at 22.5, but 23.5, great spot for it. They are playing away tonight against Miami with a decent spread, -8.5. Could be some blowout potential there. But if we look at Terry Rozier's away splits, they're pretty much the same here, 40% hit rate. And just in general, this is a tough matchup for the Hornets. Miami defense is quite strong, as you can see, 9th in points allowed, 8th in rebounds allowed, and 19th in assists allowed. But what I'm mainly liking, of course, is LaMelo is back, right? That's going to affect Terry Rozier's usage and his minutes. So you could see his average over the season is 36, about 36. With LaMelo Ball, it's 34.9. So he loses about a minute of game time. And then without, it's looking at 36.1. So you could see the difference between with LaMelo Ball and without LaMelo Ball. And if we just check his splits with LaMelo Ball on the court, he has only hit this 1 out of 7 times. They have not played too much this season together. There hasn't been too many games with LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges together. Only been 2 where, again, he went under both of those times. So all in all, we have LaMelo back. We have a tough matchup. We have a decent high spread, so potential blowout. And then we also have just general juice towards under 23.5. That is why I'm going with Terry Rozier as the first pick of tonight. The next pick is going to be on Bruce Brown over 10.5 points. This is another one I'm liking. You can take a look on props.cash. So overall, his splits, as you can see right away, 59% of the time this season, he has hit this. Now, the juice is something I want to look at first because it looks a bit conflicted, a bit confusing, right? DraftKings and BetMGM and Caesars all have juice towards the under. PointsBet has juice towards the over, and so does FanDuel. My advice, if you guys have DraftKings, Caesars, BetMGM, that's when you're watching these videos, you're watching for these specific sportsbooks, I would definitely take him on -110 or whatever other sportsbook you have him at. Definitely take him on -110. This is a great prop, and I'll show you why. On Pinnacle, you could see some sharp money is actually going towards his over 10.5 points, juice all the way to -143 on Pinnacle. They're like the only outlier here, so I think a lot of money is coming towards Bruce Brown's over 10.5 points. We have him projected at a fair value of -122 fair odds or a 55% likelihood to hit. So if you're getting anything lower than this on the sports books, like -110, definitely a good pick. Let's take a closer look into Bruce Brown's splits and everything. So one thing to notice right away is it's a tough matchup, right? Denver is 2nd in points allowed, 9th in rebounds allowed, 7th in assists allowed, and it's generally might be a blowout, especially with Tyrese Haliburton out. So -10.5 spread for Denver at home. So it looks like a very, very tough matchup. Doesn't really frighten me because Bruce Brown does have good splits. even away, he has still decent splits at a 50% hit rate. We also have to take a look at Tyrese Haliburton being out. It's only been 5 games, but he's been in pretty good form without Tyrese Haliburton here. Has kept us in 4 out of the 5 games this season, and these were the 2 most recent ones here versus Washington and Atlanta. And this one was even away versus Atlanta, which is also a pretty decent matchup. So all in all, the concern is the tough matchup, but there is juice coming towards his over. And overall, I think he has some decent splits, even better ones without Tyrese Haliburton. So that is going to be the second pick. So since I'm taking Bruce Brown, I also want to pair him up with Andrew Nembhard here on the over 5.5 assists. This line was just at 6 assists and just got bumped down to 5.5. And I kind of saw some value in it. So we're going to take a look at him on props.cash. So Nembhard's lines are kind of all over the place because of minutes. And you could see his minutes logs here. It's kind of everywhere. You don't really know what's happening here. We're just kind of consolidated down to games without Tyrese Haliburton. He averages about 23.1 minutes. And this Boston game here, where he got 20 minutes, I believe he only got 1 assist. And I'll show you why. It was an absolute blowout here. 155 to 104. And you can see that was without Tyrese. They had Obi Toppin, Mathurin, Miles Turner, Bruce Brown, and Nembhard in the starting lineup. The lineup is expected to be a bit different tonight. We got Nembhard, Bruce Brown, Hield, Jalen Smith, and Miles Turner in the starting lineup. At least the expected lineup. Including that awful game, he got 11 assists and 7 assists when he cleared it, and then only 5 assists, but pretty close to that 5.5, right? Pretty decent there. And if we take a look at the odds here on every sportsbook, heavy juice towards the overs here. I'm surprised Prizepicks bumped this back down to 5.5. Not sure why they did. FanDuel has the lowest juice and it's still over towards the minus 120. Every other sportsbook all the way up at minus 140, even minus 145. If we check Nembhard and Bruce Brown's game logs together in the Miami game and the Atlanta game, as well as the Boston game, these guys hit in the same direction. So if I show you here, when Nembhard got 11 assists versus Miami, Bruce Brown dropped 30. Then he dropped 12 points in the game where Nembhard got 7 assists. In the Washington game, they did not hit together. Nembhard went under his 5.5 assists, but Bruce Brown actually did go over his prop. But in Boston, again, since it was a blowout game, they both ended up going under there. So pretty decent hit rates on the games together, especially without Tyrese Haliburton. 3 out of 4. I know it's a small sample size, but I feel like it's a good pick because it's 1, it's positive expected value, and 2, if we're going over on an Indiana player, we might as well take an over on another Indiana player, especially if it's assists and points. So next thing we're going to go with is another player from this game, but it's not going to be on Indiana. It's going to be on the Denver Nuggets. We're going to grab Michael Porter Jr. over points. Now, I will say one thing. If this game is a blowout, these are all going to be chalked. You're going to see this go 0 for 3 most likely because if it is getting crazy and they are up like 30 points by the third quarter, a lot of reduced minutes for all 3 of these guys. They're all starting tonight. You could see how that's also powerful if it's not a blowout. These guys are going to be getting a lot of minutes and there's a high probability that all these guys cash together. That's kind of what I was trying to explain in the intro. I'm trying to get these perfect slips. I'm not going for 5 out of 6. I'm not going for a 4 out of 6. If I'm getting 6 out of 6, I'm getting a 25x payout. It doesn't even compare to the 5 out of 6 that only plays 2x. I'm building the slip to so that's why I'm building the slips to maximize my probability of getting a 6 for 6. That also higher my probability of getting an 0 for 6 because of how correlated these props are. But that is literally the optimal way to play the game here. But let's take a look at Michael Porter Jr.'s over 15.5 points. So he has cleared this 55% of the time this season. There's also juice on every single sportsbook towards the over, except Caesars. They seem a bit flat here. PointsBet actually already bumped them up to 16.5 points. So good things to see there. We got juice, we got splits, and on top of that, they are playing at home tonight, where his splits are even better here, 65% hit rate there. It's also a very easy matchup for the Nuggets tonight, 28 in points allowed on Indiana defense. So overall, I think this is a nice spot for MPJ on the over 15.5 points. Now to end it off, we're going to go to the NFL, and I have a stack. This is an interesting one because I'm actually going to go with a receiving targets one as well as a pass attempts. And I'm looking at Lamb here. I was looking at this targets. Of course, it's not a prop that's on sports books. It's kind of just on Prizepicks and DFS books. But I was looking at his prop on Underdog. He's actually set at 12 targets. So first of all, that is way too high for Underdog. If you're grabbing him on Underdog, definitely grab his under 12. But I was kind of considering, like, is 10.5 a fair spot for Lamb? Like, who's wrong here, Underdog or Prizepicks? In this case, I think it's Underdog that's wrong. I think the 12 is way too high. But the 10.5 spot, I think, is pretty decent here for Lamb on the over. And I do want to pair him up with Dak on the over 35.5 pass attempts. Of course, if Dak is throwing like 40 pass attempts, a good majority of those, like 30 to 40% of those, are going to be going to Lamb as targets. So, of course, they're going to cash together if Dak is throwing the ball this much. And I was just checking some general juice on Dak. I mean, in general, it's about kind of split. Some books do have juice towards that under, but I was checking on Pinnacle. It's kind of flat here at that 50-50 rate, minus 116, minus 114. So the reason I'm taking the over on Lamb again is because Underdog has him too high, and maybe the good spot for him is maybe 11, maybe 11.5. Dak's completion percentage to Lamb is about 75%. And I mean, last game he caught 13 out of 13, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, he got 13 targets and he caught all of them. But let's say 75% number. His receptions is set at 8. So if you grab 8 divided by 0.75, you get about 10.6 average. So definitely Prizepicks is closer to the number. If you are an underdog, definitely grab that under 12. But tonight we're going to be going with Dak and Lamb on the over pass attempts, receiving targets. Then a bit of correlation in this Indiana-Denver game. Then we just have a completely unrelated Rosier pick here on the under 22.5 points, but it is positive expected value. Let's lock this one in for tonight.